The Trump administration is proposing a new 10% tariff targeting some Canadian goods. The move follows an investigation by the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative, which claims Canada is among dozens of countries that have failed to adequately enforce a ban on imports made with forced labor. In a statement, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said this failure by what he calls the U.S.'s most important trading partners means American workers are being forced to compete on an unlevel playing field. Canada is just one of 60 economies targeted by the proposed tariff. Some countries would face an even higher rate of 12.5%. But importantly, the new tariff would not apply to goods that comply with the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Agreement on Trade, or CUSMA. The announcement comes on the heels of a visit yesterday in Washington by Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Chief Negotiator Janice Charette, where they met with Ambassador Greer. For more on what this move means as CUSMA tariffs ramp up, I am joined by Ralph Goodale, now a member of Prime Minister Carney's Advisory Committee on Canada-U.S. Economic Relations. Mr. Goodale, thanks very much for making time for us. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
So Prime Minister Carney has said today that this announcement was not a surprise, that Canada knew the U.S. was studying this issue and that it could lead to more tariffs. CUSMA-compliant goods, as I mentioned, would be exempt. So how would you describe the impact you think this move will have on Canadian businesses?
Well, any whiff of tariff is not a good thing when it could potentially disadvantage Canadian businesses in doing business in the American market. But ever since the Supreme Court ruling in the United States a few months ago that struck down a number of the tariffs that were proposed by President Trump on a certain legal basis, and the court said that basis did not exist. Therefore, those tariffs need to come off. We have known that they were looking for other ways to justify tariffs of this kind, and obviously the issue of forced labor or slave labor around the world is one that they have been examining. We knew that. It was no surprise that they would endeavor to support their trade position by using this argument. As you point out, from Canada's point of view, because we have CUSMA, and CUSMA compliant goods are exempt from this provision, or will be exempt from this provision. That is clearly good news from the Canadian point of view. It's interesting that the American argument is based on cost competitiveness and not on human rights issues. A great many people around the world might view this issue the other way around. But in any event, this is an area, if you remember, like fentanyl a year ago, where we would share the concern both about human rights and about cost competitiveness with the United States. And it's an area where we can certainly work together. We already have legislation in this field. It's already mentioned in CUSMA. We will be strengthening the legislation. Mr. Carney indicated that just in the last short while. And as with fentanyl, there may be a requirement to strengthen the resources and the capacity of CBSA, the Canada Border Services Agency, to make sure that their monitoring, detection, and enforcement provisions are sufficiently strong. But this is not a case of where we're on opposite sides in principle from the Americans. Obviously, Canada opposes forced labor, and we are anxious to perform at a very high level in implementing our laws and implementing our trade agreements consistent with that principled position.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that this is, there is a legitimate policy basis for this decision, but there is also this imperative that the Trump administration is seeking to establish yet another legal basis to justify the tariffs. But let's stay with the focus of those.
And it would affect many of their companies too. Right. I think of major retailers who do imports around the world. Some of the biggest retailers are based in the United States. and they would be subject to the same issues that we would be in Canada.
Right. And let's stay with those forced labor concerns for a moment, because the Carney government recently opened the door to 49,000 Chinese-made electric vehicles, even though there are well-documented concerns about forced labor in the production of, for example, Chinese aluminum, auto parts, electronics, among many other products. How do you think that move complicates Canada's response to these concerns being put forward by the Americans right now?
It is obviously a very important issue. We will need to be meticulous in demonstrating that this kind of import does not contravene the rules of our own law or the provisions of our trade agreements. That will be a very important priority going forward, making sure that we are consistent with our own law and with our trade agreements.
You alluded to it earlier. Prime Minister Carney said today that his government is preparing legislation to strengthen Canada's response to these forced labor concerns in both Canadian imports and supply chains. Do you have a sense there's anything Ottawa can really do here to convince the Trump administration that Canada is taking these concerns seriously, given, again, that you seem to suggest that much of this is finding cover for the Americans' tariff policy?
Bringing forward legislation that strengthens the law that's already there will obviously be a step in the right direction. That can be pointed to by our trade negotiators as evidence that we are taking this issue seriously and always have taken it seriously. The other side of the equation is detection and enforcement, and as we did in relation to fentanyl, there may be some requirement to beef up the capacity of CBSA to do the enforcement actions at the border that would be required. Similarly, it's sort of a case of the pot calling the kettle black. It may be useful on our part to point out that the Americans have some of those same enforcement issues.
I wonder if we can just step back and look at the bigger picture, because there's still a lot of noise surrounding the future of CUSMA, the state of Canada's talks with the Americans. The Trump administration's concerns are well known, whether it's limited access to Canada's dairy market, digital and streaming regulations, this new push towards more buy Canadian when it comes to procurement, or even the fact that U.S. alcohol is now no longer stocked by many provincial liquor stores. So it's hard to know what it will ultimately take to reach a deal. There's a lot of talk about the need to reach a deal, less so about what concessions might be needed to get there. So in your view, what should Canadians be expecting? What should they be thinking about when it comes to what Canada might have to give up to ultimately reach an agreement?
Well, even though this process seems like it's been going on forever, we are really at the beginning of the process, and we need to follow that old British adage about keeping calm and carrying on. We'll need nerves of steel, and we'll need to hold our courage in the face of a lot of pressure and a lot of chaos tactics that will try to divert our attention and get us running after bright, shiny objects down rabbit holes. But there are basically four parts to the government's approach to this thus far. One is building out the Canadian economy to make us bigger and stronger on our own 2 feet, so that we can be more self-reliant and less vulnerable than we have been in the past. The second part is diversifying our trade and security arrangements around the world so that we are less dependent on one particular partner in the United States. Thirdly, we need to work always to keep Canadians united so that we are cohesive and working together and pulling in the same direction on these issues, and therefore fairness and balance across the country will be extremely important. And then finally, finding ways in which we can rebuild a functional relationship with the United States. The relationship that we have known for 80 years, it's clearly come to an end, not by anything we did, but because of them. The affection has clearly gone from the relationship, and so is much of the trust, but they're still big. They still live right next door, so they will continue to be extremely important. And we need to find the ways to work with them toward common goals and objectives. And this latest issue, it's probably on the trade agenda, not the biggest issue in the world, but it's a serious one about forced labor. And it's an issue where we may be able to find common ground and work with the Americans to jointly combat the scourge of forced labor and improve the quality of life everywhere. This effort to find the ways to work together, I think, was in part what Mr. Carney was talking about last week in his speech to the Economic Club in New York, and pointing out Canadian strengths, our insistence on our own sovereignty and our independence, and indicating that a very strong, self-confident, always sovereign Canada can be a very important asset in North America.
Quite a challenging set of circumstances as you lay it out, maybe a rocky road ahead. We'll see how it all plays out. Ralph Goodale, now a member of Prime Minister Carney's Advisory Committee on Canada-U.S. Economic Relations. Thanks again for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.